Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. This is Shredder Lives On for NerdTube. This is the Wrestling Roundtable, and I'm here with Cousin Cheeto. Hi, Cousin Cheeto.
Howdy, howdy.
Thank you very much. And this week, as promised, we are going to be talking about Speaking Out. Now, this came about because last week when we did the Wrestling Roundtable, there was an allegation on Twitter against AEW's Darby Allin. Holly Cromwell, who is an independent worker in the United States, she posted to Twitter last year during the Speaking Out movement, which was basically wrestling's version of Me Too, an allegation that she had been abused by a professional wrestler, a big name professional wrestler. And last week, she finally basically came out and named him as Darby Allin, and he started trending as a result of this. So we wanted to give this the full show that it really deserves and talk about the impact of the Speaking Out movement. This is not going to be a case of us saying, well, this person's lying, this person's telling the truth, or trying to be like a YouTube version of Columbo. Again, we just really want to talk about the Speaking Out movement as a whole and the treatment of the women in the business. So, to set the background, last year, I think it was about the 19th of June last year, there were allegations that David Starr, who's an independent wrestler, who he was in the headlines because he was trying to unionize pro wrestling, or at least he was talking a lot about unionizing pro wrestling. He got named as a sex pest and a predator. So he posted a response to this on Twitter, and women in the UK independent scene said, fuck it. And they started naming names and posting a whole shitload of allegations with the hashtag Speaking Out. And again, this was pro wrestling's version of the Me Too movement. And a lot of people got named. Some were named who there was nothing really to back them up. And I don't mean that flippantly. I mean, there was people like Zicky Dice, for example. He appeared on like a list of names, but there was no allegation really attached to it. Brian Idol of Evolve, he got attached to a list, but he fired back and got a lawyer involved because a lot of the story just didn't add up. For example, the person that posted an allegation against him on Twitter said something like how he abused her in his car when he actually drives a pickup truck. He was talking about a WWE tryout he had in 2016, which is impossible because he didn't have a WWE tryout until 2018. So things like that. But the biggest name to get hit was probably Joey Ryan. Joey Ryan was the guy who did the dick spot. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Cousin Cheeto. He's the guy who would have another wrestler grab him by the dick, and he would hulk up and power out, and the person who grabbed Joey Ryan's penis would flip out. He would flip over and take a bump.
I have never heard of this person, but now I really want to see this.
Yeah, it was a fucking embarrassment when it was happening. He would do other spots as well. For example, during a match, he would pull a lollipop out of his trunks, and it would be covered in hair.
Ew.
And he would force it into his opponent's mouth. But yeah, the dick spot got named the YouPornplex because he actually got sponsorship by the website YouPorn. And again, he was doing a lot of other sexual things. He was grabbing women by the chest to suplex them. He was doing all kinds of sexual stuff, which, if you're going to do that kind of thing, you need to be as squeaky clean as possible in your personal life. You can't.
Sorry, I'm coming on.
Yep.
No, I agree 100%. Although I don't really feel like there should be any, like, let's put it this way. Wrestling is a workplace. Like,
yes.
Let's it is scripted. It is, it is staged for the most part. That kind of stuff I feel like does not belong in wrestling.
I agree.
Because you open yourself, and even same sex on same sex, a man grabbing another man's junk, a female grabbing another woman's breasts, like stuff like that. Like, I feel like that is severely inappropriate in the workplace. It's inappropriate at my workplace. I'm assuming it's inappropriate at your workplace.
Yep.
It should be inappropriate in all workplaces. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I understand, like, where you go with, pre-recorded things in movies and you have things in place. But like when you're in a live action setting like pro wrestling,
mm-hmm.
you really, even if it's live television or on televised, and oh, it's televised. I mean, they'll see if I do anything wrong. I still feel like it's inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, I feel like that you're opening yourself up to some horrible allegations. And here's the thing, and I'm a big proponent of follow the facts.
Hmm.
I think every woman who has been sexually abused, or even every man that has been sexually abused or harassed, should come forward. Every single one. However, I also feel that everyone should see the facts before the media and everybody makes judgment. I'm not defending anybody. I'm just saying, like, there's two sides. There's checks and balances for a reason. But I agree with you. Like, it's stupid to do that, even in a professional wrestling setting. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's especially opposite sex. It's a terrible idea.
I mean, this is the kind of thing, he was getting rave reviews from people like Dave Meltzer, from Brian Alvarez. They were talking about how the fact that this worked for the crowds that they were in front of. I mean, he did intergender wrestling, and some of the stuff just made me absolutely cringe, nearly vomit, because it just felt so uncomfortable to watch. But Joey Ryan was named for sexually harassing around 20 different women.
Oh my God.
Nearly 20 women came forward with allegations that Joey Ryan had sexually harassed them or he tried forcing himself on them.
Yeah, and here's the thing though, that some people, and I'm not saying that a lot of people, pro wrestlers in general, but I'm just saying, like, there are people out there that sometimes when they start doing that stuff in the workplace, they feel like they can get away with it outside of the workplace, and it's like, just because you're a big old flirt at work doesn't mean that you can be a big old flirt outside of work with people. Like stuff like that's why they say managers shouldn't, go and do things with their subordinates, because it just opens up a whole. I mean, I know you're talking about the pro wrestling side of it, but I'm also talking about the broader scope of it. It's like it's a bad idea in any scope.
Well, funnily enough, management does come into that because Joey Ryan did also own a promotion. He owned Bar Wrestling, which had a deal in place with High Spots. Joey Ryan was also doing things like an event called Joey Ryan's Penis Party in association with High Spots. High Spots, I think, are still selling the DVD of that. I don't know if I don't believe Joey Ryan is getting any more cut of the DVD sales, though. I think he was paid a flat fee. There were other things as well. He appeared at the very first All Out, which was the precursor to AEW. Not All Out, All In, I should say, which was the precursor pay-per-view to the formation of AEW, and he came out with people dressed up in penis costumes. Oh, again, this guy made a fairly lucrative living out of doing sexual things in pro wrestling, and namely using his penis for offense. But again, he was outed on during the Speaking Out movement by nearly 20 different women. Again, Holly Cromwell named Darby Allin. I don't know if you had anything more to say there about Joey Ryan.
Oh, but that's the thing though, when you have people that are like this, does that surprise you? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I mean, I can't, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying, like, we let this stuff go until it gets really bad.
Oh, he was the least surprising name to be outed. Again, there were some very, very serious ones. Jack Gallagher, for example, was accused of sexual assault, which I think he actually admitted to because he was fired from WWE as a result. He said it was an isolated incident, but more women came forward and said that, no, this had happened to me as well. So, gentleman Jack Gallagher was fired by WWE. WWE made a couple of firings, actually. There were a few who arguably should have been fired, who still continued to work there. But there were others who were fired pretty much quickly, pretty much straight away. But the most serious offenses, Jimmy Havoc, he was fired by AEW after he got accused of not just sexual assault, but domestic violence. You had David Lagana from the NWA. He was a producer there. He got fired after an allegation came out that he had been groping a female wrestler while she slept. Again, we could go through the entire list of allegations. I mean, there was so much going on. I mean, not just sexual assault, but there was sexual harassment. There was sexting of minors by a couple of people who were named.
I saw that on the list, sexting of minors. I'm like what?
Yeah, the ring announcer for MLW, Mike Haggerty, he was fired after he was revealed to have been sending illicit text messages to minors. There were also people who were training people who were taking advantage of their position as a coach and targeting young women. Now, there's a issue with the whole coaching thing and age of consent, which we'll get into a little bit later. Um, I want to ask you, Cousin Cheeto, do you think the way that women have been treated in the business has maybe got something to do with the attitude that, we can treat these people, like just sex objects?
I mean that's pretty much it. That's why I honestly did not like the Attitude. Well, there were a couple of reasons why I didn't like the Attitude Era, but one of the big proponents of me not liking the Attitude Era was the fact that they were using women. I mean, to Vince McMahon's credit, it got the butts and seats, but and it got the eyeballs on the screens, but it wasn't right. I
Yeah,
didn't
sex
like
sells.
what. Yeah, it really does, but does it make it right? Absolutely not. And that's one of the reasons why I had an issue with the Attitude Era. Now, I mean, I could go into other things, but that is nowhere even near remotely like near what this topic. So, but I mean, it's just like that, like Sable, Jacqueline, uh, and and some of these wrestlers and some of these women actually turned out to be okay wrestlers. Candice Michelle, Tori Wilson jumps to mind. Not about the good wrestler, just about like the over sexualization of
All right, yeah.
Christy Hemme. All these people are jumping in my mind back when I watched wrestling. And I mean, does this surprise me? Absolutely not, because the way they treated these women. I mean, I always go back to the Mickey James and Lay Cool rivalry with the whole Piggy James and everything like that. Absolutely, and I get it. They had consent on all parties, but it's like, and they were trying to tell a story about body shaming and how it's
Yeah.
wrong. But I feel like it's still it's with the good intent, but with the wrong venue, in my opinion. Like you over sexualize these people, and yeah, and then are you surprised that this stuff happens? No, I'm not. Like, no, absolutely not. I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often, and that's why I'm glad that people are speaking out about it. But I mean, but who gets protected and who doesn't? Obviously, I mean, I did not see any super popular names on this list. Like, so and I know that there are probably popular wrestlers, right? But like for me, like somebody who's not as well versed in the current wrestling climate, like a lot of these names, I'm like, I have no idea like what this person means to wrestling.
Yeah,
And
some of these people were from the UK scene. Some of them did work in the US. So Jack Gallagher, for example, worked 205 Live for WWE. Again, he was fired from there. Jimmy Havoc was working for AEW. Dave Lagana, as I did say, was a producer for the NWA. Dave
Mhm.
Chris, Michael Elgin, they were both at TNA, well, Impact Wrestling, I should say. Marty Scurll, I should say. He was the head booker for the for Ring of Honor,
Oh
and they suspended and fired him because of allegations that he had taken advantage of a drunken 16-year-old.
my God, like this, but no, I agree. Like, but a lot of this stuff, the way that the women have been portrayed in wrestling, and you know what, from what I've heard, and as I said, I'm not a current watcher currently. Like, I know of stuff that happens, but one thing that WWE has done is that they've at least tried to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but bring a little bit of respect to the women's division, whereas they aren't seen as sex objects anymore. They are
Absolutely.
talent.
Absolutely. That's why you've had women's matches main eventing WrestleMania. That's why they brought in Ronda Rousey. They've done everything they can to make it, a respectable division. I think it's been about 10 years at least since I've ever heard the words bra and panties or diva
Yeah.
pillow fight.
Which again is
You
just,
don't hear it anymore.
and I just, and as I said, when I heard, like, when I ever heard those matches, I mean, I just would always think to myself, this is so demeaning. Like, I never got the reason why that, like, I get why society like it. I don't get it, but like, I know why society has, why the WWE made gangbuster money off of these matches and these segments and everything like that.
Mhm.
It's because, well, our current society and our current world, it's like sex sells. You're right, and it's abysmal and it sucks. And I mean, as I said, I hated the Attitude Era, and the women's division was one of the main reasons why. Um, I don't know what, and this may be off topic a little bit, but it's like, what were your thoughts on the Nitro Girls? Like, did you see them as more of performers, or do you think that they were over sexualized as well?
I think in the early days I saw them more as performers because that was their role. They were there to basically fill time and keep the audience entertained with a dance routine while the commercial break was on for Nitro. So while Nitro was in commercial break, the live audience would see the Nitro girls, and you'd maybe catch the tail end when they returned back from commercial break. I think, unfortunately, bookers tried to then incorporate them into angles and make them characters. And unfortunately, yeah, they did try and sexualize a couple of them. Spice, I think, immediately comes to mind. They tried pairing her up with Medusa. So,
but I mean, that when I think of like, female performers, like I think, and as I said, I mean, could it be sexualized? Yes, but I didn't see it as over sexualized.
yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of an example of like an okay, I'd say, I don't want to say it, but like, like the lesser of 1,000 evils, I guess. I don't know how to word it right. But
Yeah.
okay, back on topic. Sorry, I didn't mean to rabbit trail that.
Oh, no, I'm absolutely fine with that. Yeah, I think pretty much though every woman in the business has probably had a conversation, at least the ones that have worked the independent circuit, they probably had a conversation with some of their peers saying, look, don't take a car ride from this person, or this promoter can get a bit hands-on. I
See,
think every woman has probably had that conversation.
and that's
And
wrong. Like
that's tragic.
I would hate it if I had because in my current employ, I'm a manager. I would hate it if if I was a manager of somebody and they had to look at each other and say, well, don't do a treatment with this person because this person can get a little handsy, or don't do a treatment with or he can be a verbally sexual. Like that, if that even remotely came up, I would have to rethink my entire life, and I just feel like it should be people's mindset. I don't know why that people in this industry, and I know they've gotten away with it for years because the internet, and even the internet's been a thing for a while, but I feel like it's taken this long for it to kind of finally come to light.
Absolutely. And I think something like this was probably long overdue when it happened. The idea of that, because Hollywood had the Me Too movement, which outed people like Harvey Weinstein.
Yes.
I think, this was probably long overdue that, people finally spoke up and got certain people out of the business. Now, unfortunately, there's some who also got named who nothing happened to them. There was one, I won't mention names, but there's a former valet for the promotion ICW. She posted to Twitter for the first time in 5 years during that whole movement and outed somebody from ICW as taking pictures of schoolgirls coming out in uniforms at the gates, and nothing appeared to be done about that. One person whose name I will mention, because the stupid bastard got outed on Twitter, which is Joe Coffey. Now, he's a name you probably won't be familiar with. He works at NXT UK. He got outed for sending unsolicited dick pics to some women. Now, the thing is, the reason that he got outed was somebody posted the images that he'd been sending on Twitter. And not only that, they then posted his follow-up text where he tried to apologize for it after he got outed. Yeah. But I think that's been the way the business has worked, unfortunately, for a number of years. And, again, women having to speak to each other privately and saying, look, don't go work for this promoter, or at least don't take a car ride from this wrestler here, or this member of the ring crew, or this ring announcer, or whatever, because they can get a bit hands-on. And
which is crazy because you as I said, a woman should never have to worry about that. Like they shouldn't.
Absolutely not.
Just like a guy. I mean, okay, so like just because guys are okay with, like if a hot girl came up to a guy and said, hey, I and gets handsy, just because, and as I said, some guys aren't okay with this, but just because the majority of guys are okay with something like that does not mean that women are okay with it at all. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, like 9 times out of 10 guys would be like, if a hot girl came up and said, do me now, 9 out of 10 guys would be like, okay. Or if they sent, if the girl sent, this guy nudes, like it was a hot girl, 9 times out of 10 guys would be like, okay. but it's like that doesn't mean just because you're okay with that does not mean that everyone else in the world is okay with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I mean, like consent is severely important, and I mean, unsolicited dick pics are just stupid because like, and especially if you work with the person. As I said, it's a workplace. Like I'm not going to send any of my coworkers a dick pic. I mean, not only would they, have to get a magnifying glass out, but they would also just, like they would it'd be an HR nightmare, and I
absolutely.
would be fired.
Yeah, most people in any sort of professional any sort of professional line of work would be fired.
Yeah,
Even semi-professional line of work, you'd be fired for that kind of conduct. There were other instances. For example, there was a channel on YouTube called Wrestle Talk. I don't know if you've ever watched any of their content.
I
They're
don't think so.
they're a UK-based wrestling channel, and they did used to have a TV show at one point, I think, as well.
Oh
But
wow.
they're co-owned by a UK indie worker, well, former UK indie worker at least, called Alex Shane. And one of the things he got outed for was he would basically sleep with women in the business, and he would take photographs and put them up on a wall called the Wall of Shane, which he would boast about to other guys he was with. But the thing is, I was really pissed off when Wrestle Talk actually addressed it, and they announced that Alex Shea would be walking away from the company because one, he's still, I think, a 51% co-owner of the company, and two, when they made the announcement, it was their usual. They took 13 different fucking cuts of the guy completing one simple phrase. The fact that Alex Shane was outed and he was going to be stepping away from the company. I mean, that kind of thing. Don't do it, as like one of your standard fucking videos. Just
Yeah.
address it seriously. Don't take 13 fucking cuts just to come out and say Alex Shane was outed. He's going to be taking, or Alex Shane was named in the allegations. He's going to be taking time out from the company while these are being investigated. One of the other things that did come up was abuse of trainees. So this is something that happened on both sides of the pond. Mike Quackenbush, who was the head trainer for Chikara, he got outed for sexually harassing trainees. Chikara has subsequently, I think, shut down because pretty much everybody decided to leave. I know Cheeseburger, who runs a dojo of his own, he is like 30 minutes away, so he took in a lot of the Chikara students. But
Cheeseburger?
yeah, there's a wrestler on ROH called Cheeseburger. He took he took a number of the trainees from Chikara in because his school is like 30 minutes away from Chikara's one. But Mike Quackenbush always tried to paint himself as one of the good guys of the business, and then he gets outed for this shit.
So how much? I mean, you have obviously followed this very well. I mean, I have not had a chance to really dive into this. So how much of this, like, I know these people have been outed, but how much of this has been proven to be legit? Like, I know some of these are not surprising and we can assume are correct, but like, are there any of them that are, like, and I mean, you don't have to name names, but it just like because as I said, I do like to look at it from both sides. Like, I do like to look at it from, because like I go back to Chris Hardwick. Remember when he was accused and like it was just complete, as far as I know, it was all completely bullshit. Like you probably didn't even hear about it because like, but they did. Allegations came out against him from his ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
And he basically was like, what are you talking about? Like, and basically the whole world went crazy for like 5 minutes about him, not Chadwick, about Chris
Hardwick.
Doing all, abusing and yada, yada. And then, of course it went away because it wasn't true. So, I mean, are any of these like kind of iffy, or are these all just like, yeah, these are for real?
Well, the ones I've sent to you, the list of names that I sent to you earlier, these were all people who had either been fired after investigations by the companies they worked for,
Okay.
confessed that they'd done it, or in some cases they had more than one accuser come forward. This was like a Bill Cosby moment where they had, if you remember, Cosby had like 50 accusers come forward and only one was prosecuted for because it was the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
But again, these names I sent were multiple people involved. There were others who got named for other reasons. Vince Russo, for example, appeared on one of the lists, but it wasn't because he actually directly sexually harassed anyone. It's because of the way he treated women during his time as a booker at companies like WCW and TNA.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah, so that was the kind of thing that he was appearing on these lists for. There were other guys again who were appearing who really shouldn't have been there. Zicky Dice was one. Cesaro was another. There was nothing ever actually there to substantiate what he was actually being accused of. Xavier Woods, I think, was on the list purely because of the sex tape that got leaked between him and Paige. Which is not really his fucking fault. If you and a woman record a sex tape and it gets hacked and leaked, I'm not blaming either of you for that.
Yeah, right. I mean, no. As long as what was in the tape was consensual, I don't see. If anything, that just proves it's not. As long as everything was consensual in the tape. I mean,
yeah.
Now, I mean, obviously, it getting leaked and released. I mean, that's a shame. I mean, that shouldn't. But I mean, again, if you make a sex tape, like you might get out there. You go into that with that mindset.
Cloud storage.
Yeah. The cloud knows all.
Absolutely, but a lot of these guys were named, who were named on the list. Again, action has been taken against them. They've been fired. They've been blackballed. I think in at least one there may be a criminal case coming up, which is Jimmy Havoc. As far as I'm aware, the allegations against him were handed to West Yorkshire Police. They were considered that serious.
Well, hey, I mean, yeah, as I said, if they deserve it, they deserve it. And I mean, as I said, I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying, like you said, there's I feel like there's gotta be some proof. And as you said, there were action taken against these wrestlers post investigation. So, okay. You know what I mean? Like that, and really this stuff shouldn't be tolerated. It really shouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, if you can't, go ahead.
No, on you go.
I was just gonna say, like, if you can't, like, in my work, and if I was a wrestling promoter, if you cannot treat, Betty Sue, who is extremely attractive, but is a performer and a wrestler, the same way that you treat Doof Bogler, who is also a performer and a wrestler, if you can't treat them equally, then you should not be a manager of these people.
But one of the things that really annoyed me about this whole thing when SpeakingOut happened was there's the number of people who just automatically called the women the women that came forward liars. They said, "Oh, you're lying." I mean, this happened again. This has happened with the Me Too movement. This happened with Time's Up. This happened when the women came out and accused Bill Cosby. They got accused of lying. There was an incident here where there was a television presenter in this country. Her name's Vanessa Feltz. She used to present a show. I think it was either The Big Breakfast or it was called On the Bed. And one of the people she was interviewing at one point was another guy who was quite famous on TV in this country, which was Rolf Harris. Now she put out an accusation that Rolf Harris had actually groped her, put his hand up her thigh on camera, and nobody had caught it. And a lot of people called her out and said, "No, you're fucking lying. This didn't happen." And they were talking about her weight, her appearance. She's fairly hefty woman, but again, a lot of people were talking about that. But no, lo and behold, people found the tape in question, and yeah, there it is. He's putting his hand right up her thigh, and this was on live television. Nobody caught it.
Yeah,
and she didn't talk about it. So there is always that issue with women not prepared to come forward with this kind of allegation purely because there's always going to be people out there saying you're lying, you're not, you're completely dishonest. Or you get people like, say, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, David Serini. He was this guy who really, really hated feminism, so much so that he got a bunch of incels to donate money to him to do a documentary about Anita Sarkeesian. And what happened is that David Serini has gone on record in the past saying if he was to be brought to the jury, I may be getting my wires crossed. This is either Davis Sereni or it's Paul Ellen, who runs A Voice for Men. One of them said if they were selected for a jury in a rape case and they knew the man was guilty, they would still vote to acquit.
Why? Like,
they have a deep fucking hatred of women. I'd put Arini in that category. I mean, if you've ever watched the guy's videos, I mean, if you haven't, God bless you. I envy you, sir.
So Block says, good, okay, boy network is everywhere. It suppresses women and men alike from coming forward, not just on sex, but work environment in general. And that's true. I mean, there is a lot of, especially in the States, there's a lot of work. You know, a lot of people are afraid to come out against workplaces too, because, you know, if there's not enough jobs. But I mean, it's still.
Well, if you think about it, it's probably worse in pro wrestling because remember, it's always been the case that the main attraction is the men. You're coming to watch the men's matches. Women on most cards is basically one match, you know, filler, and that's pretty much it. They're a sideshow attraction for a lot of the cards.
Which is why I was actually impressed, like over the past couple months, when you guys have started talking more about wrestling and about what WWE has done with their women's division. I mean, I feel like, I mean, I may be wrong, but I would feel like that would be more of maybe a Stephanie McMahon thing, you know, maybe now that she's getting more and more power, but maybe it's somebody else. But
I'm not entirely sure how much Stephanie McMahon has to do with it because remember she was around for a lot of the sexual stuff in the Attitude Era as well.
But I think that's why I thought maybe she was like, okay, we're changing this now that I have more power here. Now that my dad is kind of stepping back a bit more and more, and Paul Levesque and Stephanie are kind of stepping in. Maybe that's kind of, I don't know. I might be wrong. As I said, I don't know.
I think it's got more to do with the rise of women in MMA.
Okay, that could be true too.
Because if you follow along the timeline, it's almost like WWE has maybe been a year or two behind the rise of women in mixed martial arts. So they had Gina Carano have the first, I think, really mainstream mixed martial arts fight on television, or at least involving women. And then Ronda Rousey became the biggest draw in the sport when she was dominating in the UFC.
Mm-hmm. No, and that actually tracks. That actually tracks. So I mean, all right, well, fine. I ain't giving Stephanie McMahon any credit then.
Well, so I think that's probably got more to do with the women's revolution than Stephanie McMahon. But I wanted to talk about the abuse of trainees.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Again, Mike Quackenbush of Chikara, he was outed as grooming trainees. We had El Ligero and Travis Banks, who were working for WWE at NXT UK. They both got outed for abusing trainees, for sexually grooming trainees is what I should really describe it as. Ligero basically admitted that he did it and that he should have been a better person. Travis Banks, I think, also pretty much admitted it, and which is why he was fired. Kid Fight, who was a trainer for the Glasgow Pro Wrestling Asylum, which feeds into ICW, which is one of the small promotions that WWE features on their network. He got outed as grooming a 16-year-old trainee. Now, there's a gray area when it comes to the age of consent laws in this country. Now, if I were a teacher or a doctor or a member of parliament or any kind of professional in any field, and I took advantage of because the age of consent is 16. If you're 16 years or older, you're old enough to have sex.
Is that in the UK? Because
that's in the UK.
Okay.
The UK age of consent is 16. So if I was again a doctor, a teacher, a member of parliament, or anybody in what's called a position of power, if I were to have sex with someone under my someone underneath me. So, like, again, if I was a teacher and I was to have sex with a 16-year-old student, I would be fired immediately for that because that is considered an abuse of power. That's legally not allowed. You're not allowed to have that kind of power dynamic with somebody under the age of 18. So the The NSPCC, however, has been trying to close a grey area, which is that coaches are not covered by this. So if you coach any kind of sport or a drama club or anything else, you can technically have sex with 16-year-old students and get away with it, even though you have that position of power over them. And Ross Watson, Kid Fight, was doing this. He got outed. He got outed in a text message. He initially tried to deny it, and then, lo and behold, he got outed again with another text message. The person who accused him posted the text messages saying that, showing that he knew she was 16. He then tried to post an apology on Facebook where he said that once I realized she was 16, I accidentally carried on the conversation. And the victim in question, she kept all the receipts. She kept the text messages, posted them online, showing Kid Fight knew she was 16. And not only that, he was telling her to tell her parents where she was, that she was with friends, not with him. So this is the kind of scummy behavior that was going on. And again, this is something that the UK Parliament is now looking into. This happened across the pond as well. Jordan Grace, who was the Impact Women's Champion at the time, she spoke out and said that when she was training to be a wrestler, she was I think 17 at the time. She was being groomed and having sex with the head trainer. So this kind of stuff going on. What do you think really would be the solution to prevent this kind of thing?
I don't.
Do you think maybe the athletic commissions have to step in?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that would be a step. I don't know if that's the step. I mean, the athletic commission could probably. I mean, I'm not sure of the ins and outs in the athletic commission, but I feel like there needs to be. I feel like there needs to be harsher judgments on some of these people, just because. I mean, I don't want to say they need to be made an example of, but at the same time, they need to see they can't have like reduced sentences. They can't these people need to not get off easy. They need to serve whatever time it is, and based on whatever their crime is.
But that's the thing. It's technically not a criminal act what they were doing. Well, at least apart from the allegation with Jordan Grace. I mean, Jordan Grace, I think at age 17, that would technically be underage where you are, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that is a minor.
Over here, again, these were people who were taking advantage of women as young as 16 to 17. Now, again, if I was a teacher and did that with a student, or if I was a doctor and did that with someone who was registered as a patient at my clinic, or if I was a member of parliament and I did that with a prospective young member of staff or a campaign worker, I would potentially be going to jail for that. However, with coaches, that is a complete loophole. It's a gray area. You're allowed to get away with this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, what needs that? You're right. I mean, the athletic commission or somebody needs to step in and close that loophole. Period. You know what I mean? Like, if it's not okay for teachers, then it shouldn't be okay for coaches. Like,
Yeah, I think over here we don't have athletic commissions. We don't have local athletic commissions. I think probably does need to be. I think first of all there needs to be an act of parliament put through to actually finally close this loophole to say okay, coaches are going to be covered by the same rules and regulations as these other professional bodies.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, so you guys don't have any kind of athletic commission over there or anything like that. I didn't know that.
Not for anything that would cover wrestling, no.
Okay.
There have been people trying to call on that. Alex Shane was one of them, but it turned a lot of people felt it was just a scam, and he was trying to skim money off other promotions. So nobody was prepared to really sign up to anything that he was proposing.
Are any of those people who said that on this list?
No. Although I could mention a few promoters, but I won't. But well, at least not on stream. But there's been talk over here about having women's officers in place with regard to these promotions, and I think yes and no. There does need to be a women's officer in place, but a lot of promotions run on a shoestring budget. You know, these are not professional companies. These are people who maybe run one or two shows per month, and some of them who have announced a women's officer, they've appointed it. It's basically either their wife or their girlfriend of the promoter. And no, it has to be completely independent.
Oh yeah, it has to be not autonomous, but like outside of that promotion. And honestly, sometimes I mean, women can be bought off too. Like here's the thing. I mean, if you've got people, I mean, I understand having a woman in that place. I understand that. Like that makes sense in the current climate of things. But at the same time, women can be bought off too. When
I
you
mean,
know, so you know, if they throw enough money at them, I'm sure that they can that the women will look a blind eye. You know how
oh,
many sex
absolutely,
trafficking rings have been ran by women?
yeah.
Like, and everyone's like, oh, but their motherly instincts won't let that happen. And it's like, ah, no, I've seen some pretty crazy shit.
No, but I think there's probably going to be okay. First, we have checks that you can put in place
Hmm.
for people who are trying to become professional coaches. You go through a background check, and it basically makes sure that you're not a registered sex offender, you're not been convicted of any crimes that really should prevent you from working with children.
I was about to
But
say, yeah, we got to make sure that they don't work with
but
children.
that's pretty much it. I think what should probably happen, at least over here, because we don't have the athletic commissions, I think over there, perhaps athletic commissions should probably step in and regulate wrestling again, everywhere, right across the United States. Have wrestling and the schools regulated the same way, because I know there's some parts of the country where the athletic commission doesn't touch it because obviously Vince McMahon said, "Hey, this is all a show." And there's other parts that still regulate it. So states like Kentucky, for example, Kentucky has got a very, very stringent regulations when it comes to professional wrestling. That's why Ian Rotten had to flee to Indianapolis. But here, I think probably it's got to be done more with the local authorities over here. The local authorities probably need to step in and start looking at pro wrestling and coaching in general in other areas too. To make
Mhm.
to actually have an independent body or an independent officer in place who can have these kind of things reported to them and then investigated anonymously.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah, I mean, you can't. I don't know. They can't. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, there needs to. You're right. There needs to be checks in place that make this, you know, that close these loopholes. Don't just make it a little more difficult for them to get away with it. There needs, you know, what I mean. Like, it needs to be. I don't know. You know, you see all the time that people just throw money at a problem, and it's like that's not necessarily the solution to every problem. You know.
absolutely. There was one female trainer who got named, and again, this goes back to the the whole issue of people saying, "Oh, well, these people are automatically liars." I mean, it's almost like some people had the attitude. I think back to like when Chris Benoit murdered his wife and son, and there were so many people who were, adoring fans of Benoit. They refused to believe it, and they were coming up with all kinds of crazy theories. They were saying Kevin Sullivan did it, or that it was. I think Bell Apter said he thinks it was a fucking mob hit designed to look like a murder suicide. There are the kind of people who will forgive someone, or at least will look the other way because they love this person, or they think, well, I'm a big fan of this person, I really like them, so they're automatically innocent. And this is an attitude I've heard and felt and seen from people I actually know regarding one of the people who was named, which was Soraya Knight. Soraya Knight is the mother of Paige, and she and her husband run uh, a promotion that's called WAW, and
Never heard of that. Or no, I've heard
yeah.
of AWA. Never mind.
um, I don't know if you saw the movie Wrestling with My Family.
No, but I know who's in that, and I've seen plenty of promotions about it, but I've never actually watched it. That's the one with The Rock, right?
Yeah, but that was about Paige and her family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Paige's family were, well, again, Soraya Knight was outed for beating the shit out of trainees when she felt like it. One person accused her of putting her tongue down his throat when he was 10 years old and sitting in the crowd. It, was quite disgusting. Um, Soraya Knight and her family, threatened quite a few of these people with physical violence. What this wasn't a case of, we're going to go to the police, and get the, if you keep bringing this up, we're going to go to the police and have this properly investigated. They were threatening these people with physical violence, and not just the family. Fans of the Knights were threatening the accusers with physical violence and try to drop their names, try to drop their, dox them, post their home address. One person did have his address posted to Twitter. And again, I really hate this whole fucking attitude of, look, I'm not saying some of these people who were named are automatically guilty, but for fuck's sake, I'm not going to immediately jump on and say, well, no, because I happen to like wrestler X, they're automatically innocent.
I mean, I was, as you were saying earlier, I was a huge Chris Benoit fan. Like, for me, back in the day, it was Bret Hart. I can't even, probably Bret Hart, Chris Benoit, maybe Sting, like a lot of those wrestlers back in the day. And when this news broke, like, I was heartbroken. You know what I mean? But I get what you're saying. Like, but I wasn't one of those that was like, oh, that's not true. That can't be true. I was like, I get what you're saying is like, we can't jump to the fact that they're innocent or they're liars, but we also can't jump to the conclusion that it's true. We have to wait for, and as you said, if there's already proof and there's already been action post investigation that's gone on, I mean, what else do we don't know these people personally. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, yeah, did it break my heart that one of my favorite wrestlers turned out to be what he was? Absolutely. But I mean, I didn't for a moment sit there and think, oh, that they're lying. That ain't true. And especially making up theories. It's a mob hit, Kevin Sullivan. Like, I know people are crazy and I know people will do crazy things, but at the same time, when it's all said and done, evidence kind of points, and evidence, the evidence will speak. And I mean, that's kind of what's happened in all these situations is they did an investigation and they found out that unless there is some like public hit on some of these people, like not public, publicity hit on some of these people, but if you have the proof, then you can't deny it. And unless you can discount that proof legitimately, it is what it is. That's why people need to, like, right now, if someone came out and said, it said that I sexually harassed them, I would love for them to show me proof, because there would be none. You know what I mean? Like, that people just need, what it boils down to, and I know this is going to sound cheesy, but it's like, people just need to be good people. We need to respect other human beings as we want to be respected. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it all boils down to. And whether it's pro wrestling, sports, politics, everything, we just need to respect one another. And I mean, but these people that get in power, and and we hear this story all the time about teachers grooming students, and trainers grooming trainees, and all this other stuff. And it's just like, people just need to learn to stop it. Just quit being dumbasses.
Well, I want to get your thoughts on how some of the companies handled the situation. Now, I'm fairly mixed on this. It's a case of pretty much every pro wrestling company that you watch, there has been somebody that was accused, that was named on Speaking Out, that is still there, or were kept there longer than they really should have been. So, just as an example, the NWA has Tyrus, who's actually, I think, still under investigation for allegations of sexual misconduct against fellow anchors on Fox News. So some of his co-hosts on Fox, he was apparently sexually harassing via text message some of his co-hosts on Fox News.
I mean, if there's any validity to these claims, like, they should be suspended and not able to work until I mean, look, as I said, I'm all for the evidence speaking. I'm all for their evidence. But at the same time, when you're under investigation, you can't just, like, with my patients, it's like, if a patient reports that I'm abusing them, like, I can't go back to work until it is whether it's true or not, which it's never been true, or actually, I don't even think I've ever been accused. But like, if when we have those situations, in the medical field, you are not allowed to return to work until the investigation is complete. And whether it's in your favor or not, you are not at work. Like, even if it looks like it's in your favor, you're not at work. Until that investigation is done, you are not allowed back at work. So I don't understand why, if these people are under this kind of investigation and there is even a hint of validity to it, why these people are allowed to still be at work. Like, are they still actively wrestling, or?
Yeah, well, again, Tyrus is currently wrestling for the National Wrestling Alliance. Tom Latimer was another one named in Speaking Out, but Tom Latimer has also got a history of domestic assault to his name. So, again, I'm really disappointed that they continued to book him. There was a Velveteen Dream, for example. He was another one. There was a campaign for weeks and weeks and weeks to have him fired from WWE. There were even people when NXT had matches inside the Thunderdome, and they had the screens all around. People were putting up "Fire Velveteen Dream" on the screens.
Hey,
because he was accused of sending sexually explicit messages to minors.
well, as I said, the evidence speaks. Yeah, like, these people don't need to be working if they're under investigation.
This is the state. I've got the statement here that WWE did put out at the time. They put out a press release regarding the accused talents. This is what WWE said. Individuals are responsible for their own personal actions. WWE has zero tolerance for matters involving domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual assault. Upon arrest for such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately suspended. Upon conviction for such misconduct, a WWE talent will be immediately terminated. The WWE's ability to fine, suspend, or terminate a talent will not be, however, limited or compromised in any manner in the event incontrovertible evidence of such legal misconduct is presented to WWE. Now, as I did say, they fired Jack Gallagher immediately. I think it was like a day or two later, they fired both El Ligero and Travis Banks. I don't know if you recall, previously they fired Enzo Amore when he was accused of rape.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, Enzo Amore was, at the time, he was actually their cruiserweight champion. And women had come forward with an accusation of rape against him, and he was fired immediately.
Oh man, I like the cruiserweights.
Enzo was not a great cruiserweight.
Oh, okay. Well, then he sucks, and he should be fired.
He was a shitty wrestler. Let's be perfectly blunt. But he was fired when he was accused of rape. Although the charges were subsequently dropped. A police investigation found that there wasn't any evidence to actually support the claims. But he didn't get rehired. He was apparently not very well liked.
Well,
to be fair to WWE, I think in a lot of cases they did handle it very, very well. Again, Ligero, Banks, and Gallagher being fired almost immediately were probably, very, very good moves by them. But again, there are some who were named on there on Speaking Out who still work for the company to this day. Matt Riddle is one of them. I'll put his name out there because it was very, very high profile. I think he has just recently had the case thrown out of court, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, his name was put out there, and he was still booked on live TV. Which, okay, hindsight being 2020 and all, okay, if it's been thrown out, that's one thing. But why was he allowed to carry on working while there was an active investigation going on against him?
And he shouldn't have been. As I said, if there's an active investigation, they shouldn't be allowed to work.
Absolutely not. I think really all we can really do is kind of wrap this up. So I just want to ask you, do you think there's going to be any kind of a legacy to Speaking Out, like the Me Too movement, or do you think a couple of years' time we'll have another incident like this?
Well, and I hope it does, only because I feel like females and males, mostly females though, unfortunately, need to speak out when this kind of crap happens. They need to know that things will happen. And, I mean, you need to treat people with respect, and taking advantage of people is not treating them with respect. You know what? You are not God's gift to them. You know what I mean? Like, so you have no right to impose any kind of, power or influence onto them. Like, it is a professional workplace. Like, look, if you guys, if they, even when you guys become employed together, it's automatically inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like, if these were two people that slept together, like, before they were hired, you can't come back later and say, oh, well, I slept with this person beforehand. But it's like, when you work with one another, it's inappropriate unless you are spouses. You know what I mean? Like, like Savage and Miss Elizabeth for a time. And I know that's a whole nother situation, but I mean, I'm just using that as the first example that popped in my mind. You can't really, you can't really, but bottom line is, it needs to be like a workplace. Just because it's a bunch of testosterone heavy guys and, very, attractive women, that doesn't give credence for these males to do whatever the hell they want.
Well, I'll partly disagree with you that in the sense that I actually don't have any issue with workplace romances as long as it's not like, for example, for example, I'm a manager at my place of work. I absolutely would not date a coworker because
Same here.
of that power dynamic. But if you've got two people roughly on the same level, and I've got no issue at all with a workplace-based romance. I mean, we've seen a couple of marriages in recent years spawning
Okay.
from WWE. For example, CM Punk and AJ Lee hooked up in WWE and got married. Edge and Beth Phoenix got married. You've just recently had Jungle Boy come out that he's in a relationship with Anna Jay at AEW. So,
Okay, no, you know what? Okay, maybe but I mean, like, if you're a booker or something, maybe somebody
oh
over.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, if they're like on the same level, like, I guess, but at the same time, you also need to protect yourself because, but just be a decent human being. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
guys, particularly some ones that were named, really just need to learn. No means no.
yeah, that's really the bottom line. The bottom line, and it should be on the T-shirt, is no means no. And even if you think they feel uncomfortable, you should back off. You know what I mean? Like,
It's unfortunate that I think speaking out is probably going to have a couple of positive impacts in the business. Namely, I think that the loophole in coaching is finally going to be closed down purely because of people like Ross Watson and people like Mike Quackenbush. Well, Mike Quackenbush wouldn't really apply here, but people like El Ligero, Travis Banks, those guys are going to have that loophole finally fucking closed. The NSPCC is going to point to these people and say, look, these people were taking advantage of 16-year-old girls
oh
in their
yeah,
care as coaches. That loophole has to stop now. So that's one positive I will say is probably going to come from this. However, I don't think we've heard the last of this. I think the fact that Holly Cromwell, for example, has only now about a year later come out and said, look, it was Darby Allin that was the subject of my speaking out post. I think that's probably going to happen again in a few years' time. And again, we're going to go through this cycle. Women will come forward with names. You'll have some fucking fanboys on Twitter saying, "Oh, you're lying. You're seeking attention, or you're doing this now just because this person is getting a push in this big company or whatever." And the cycle, unfortunately, is probably going to continue.
well, and that's why I'm saying, like, I mean, this stuff needs to be handled professionally.
Yeah.
And for people to go to Twitter and on saying that they're like, no, wait for the evidence to speak. As I said, I'm sure that there will be people that have allegations on them that are not justified. I'm not saying they didn't happen, but I'm saying maybe they can't prove it or they can't. And you know what? Okay,
Well,
but
it depends because again, I think this was pretty much wrestling's Me Too movement, and this was more to I think this was more just to encourage people to come forward and actually speak out about what kind of thing happened to them. Like, hey, look, this happened to me. I'm going to speak about this. Hopefully I'll encourage somebody else to. It's what happened with Harvey Weinstein. It happened with Kevin Spacey. It's happened with quite a few people in Hollywood. So again, I think this was a necessary evil.
Yeah, no, and I agree. As I said, I mean, it's not pretty, but it's not going to be, because what's been going on for the past 50 years, let's just say,
Mhm.
since pro wrestling's been around, has not been pretty. It's just we haven't seen it. And it's good that this is coming out, because now we can hopefully move forward, and there will be checks and balances in places, and we will actually be able to see some kind of upward trend when it comes, well, downward trend when it comes to sexual assault and everything in the behind the scenes of pro wrestling. Because it's, and as I said, does this stuff surprise me? Absolutely not, because I you hear about a lot of these guys. I mean, when we do Dark Side of the Ring,
Yeah.
when we do Dark Side of the Ring reviews, I mean, some of the stuff I'm hearing, and I don't know a lot about a lot of the wrestlers that we talk about sometimes, especially Grizzly Smith. I had no idea about him, but then just listening to you guys talk about him, it's just like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Like, this is absolutely abysmal, and this stuff happens, and I should have known, but I didn't try to assume.
I mean, there's horror stories all over the internet of the way the male wrestlers used to treat female fans. I mean, you would get people like Stan Lane, Mick Foley would recount in his book that you would see Stan Lane going to the hotel room with a woman in each arm and a bottle of baby oil and a bottle of champagne in his hands. And he'd go to the hotel room. He'd go to the hotel room with two women and have a good time. But then you had stories from people like Raven or Perry Saturn about the kind of debauched stuff they used to do with women. And, you do kind of understand to a degree where this fucking attitude came from of, how it was okay to treat women like shit, both in and out of the business.
Which is sad. And I mean, I hate, I'm trying to say this right, because I don't want it to come across as like, I really wish that women would have. I really wish the women had the platform back then to step up and say, this is not right. You know what I mean? I don't want to say that, that they should have stepped out before and it's their fault for not stepping. That's not what I'm trying to say. I wish they would have had the platform they have today to step out and say, this is not right.
Yeah.
Like and I'm glad that this kind of stuff is happening, because these people need to know that it's not okay. I mean, it's not that it's not okay. It's abysmal. It is a travesty of humanity. It's not, I mean, we could go outside of wrestling and talk about this topic, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's not okay anywhere. I don't care if you're doing it on the space station. It's not okay.
I mean, it's deplorable, and unfortunately, if 5, 10 years from now we have another incident of speaking out, of more women coming forward with stories about being harassed, abused, assaulted, I sadly would not be surprised.
I know.
And
Well, and that's the problem is, human
I think,
beings never learn.
and I think it's going to take better minds than you or I to figure out a way that you get this out of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Unless you've anything more to add, Cousin Cheeto?
Nope. I just want everybody to be good to one another. That's all I want.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us for this edition of the Wrestling Roundtable. A bit more somber than we normally like to do here. Hopefully we'll have something more entertaining maybe next week. Maybe we'll shit on AEW or WWE.
Yes! I mean, I don't watch it, but I mean, I love hearing people shit on AEW. It's okay. Wait. Well, I'll ask you later. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Cousin Cheeto, for joining us.
Hey, no problem.
Have a safe, pleasant evening or rest of your day. We'll see you all again soon. On behalf of NerdTube, bye bye.